Guys, the H1B visa program accounts for roughly 1.3 million residents in the United States. That's 730,000 H1B visa holders and 550,000 of their dependents. But what roles are they serving? Is this program being abused? Where does Trump actually falling down on this topic? Because there's been a lot of kind of conversations going back and forth. But hold that thought. We'll get to Trump here in just a moment. I just want to highlight that the H1B visa program is not just big tech. There's a lot of people that fall into this. And again, we'll get into this in a little more detail here in just a moment. But you've got everyone from K through 12 teachers, university teachers, healthcare, manufacturing, and of course, big tech, software engineering, etc. One quick side note here, universities are using an enormous amount of H1B visa teachers. There are over 16,000 university teachers in the H1B visa program. Stanford, the University of Stanford has 500 teachers. That was a shocking number to me that they have so many H1B visa teachers at Stanford. Are you telling me that there's not enough American university teachers to fill these roles? Is that really what we're saying? There's just not enough smart, intelligent. I mean, the reality is that college kids can't get jobs right now. Why is it that none of these college kids are able to move into professor roles, internship roles? What does that career pipeline look like? I'm really, really curious because as we've been covering, kids graduating from college, kids in general are having a really hard time finding work. Is it possible that we could put those in the pipeline? I don't know. We'll talk about that here a little bit in a moment. But anyway, I thought that number was surprising. So where's Trump landing on this? Because Trump has been very interesting. He was elected as America First. And, you know, a big part of that is bringing jobs back to America, bringing manufacturing to America, you know, less reliance on other countries, obviously with the tariffs and energy independence, all these different things that were big, kind of like the main pushes from MAGA, I would say. And the H1B visa program is a big deal because if you get fired and your company is bringing in people from overseas, that doesn't really feel good, does it? Does that feel good? No, it doesn't. And so one of the things that Trump has done in September was he implemented a $100,000 application fee. So if you're a company like, let's say Amazon, for example, and you want to hire an H1B visa worker to come, maybe he's from India, he's going to come to the United States and work in your software development team. Well, now in order to get in here, you have to submit a $100,000 application fee. And the idea there is that it stops the undercutting of wages, because that's the complaint that Americans have. Hey, you've got me competing not against just all the people here in the United States, but you're bringing in people from overseas, you're paying them less, you're forcing them to do these jobs, maybe even bend over backwards in some cases. For example, if you're here on a visa from India, would you be willing to work for less than an American? Maybe. Would you be willing to bend over backwards? Because if you don't, you'll get fired and sent back to your country. That's the indentured servant type of stance that I hear people taking. I think it's a valid one. But what's interesting to me, so Trump took this stance, we're going to shut down the H1B visas, which I'm sure big tech guys didn't like. That was in September. But in November, he kind of changed his tune. And this is what I want. This is kind of what brought this to the forefront for me, because Trump was on a podcast or interview with Laura Ingraham. He said that the U.S. lacks, quote, certain talents. Specifically, he's referring to building computer chips and missiles and the next generation of technology. And it was just kind of interesting that he took the stance of, hey, we don't have enough talent here. But the other thing that he said that kind of confuses me is he was referring to student visas that, quote, cutting Chinese enrollment would destroy cutting Chinese enrollment by half would destroy America's university system. We need those 600,000 Chinese students to keep colleges in business. It's pro-MAGA because it funds education that trains our workers. And then Trump added that without them, universities would perhaps make people happy by closing, but then they'd go out of business. But the question I have here is, why is it that we can only bring in people from China to teach them? Why are we teaching people from other countries how to perform these high-skilled roles. I mean, just a few days ago, the Ford CEO, we covered this in a video, said there's not enough skilled labor here in the United States. He said that they have 5,000 higher-end roles that they can't fill. So let me get this straight. And he said, by the way, it's going to take a few years to get these people trained up, which I understand, the technology's moving. But here's the question, guys. Why do we need to bring in 500,000 young, intelligent kids to educate them here in the United States from other overseas? Why can't we educate the kids that we have here? You know, is this a deeper problem? Is the next generation just not interested in learning more valuable skills? Are they kind of set in a more comfortable type of environment? I don't know. You tell me in the comments, guys. Tell me in the comments, because I think this is really interesting. Because the reality is that we are falling behind when it comes to robotics, when it comes to manufacturing. We covered this in a video. I'll put a link to it here. Last year, in 2024, China installed 295,000 new manufacturing robots. The United States installed 34,000. They 10x, guys. They nearly 10x. China is pumping out the next generation of manufacturing, of robotics, of energy, and the United States is just way behind. And so, you know, I think that there could be an argument made that says, listen, we don't have enough skilled labor right now. We need to bring in studs from overseas in order to help build out our systems and train our next generation. But if you're telling me that we're going to be H1B visaing, we're going to be bringing in people from overseas in order to teach people from overseas, the natural kind of impact that I get here is that our kids, our students, our next generation, our young people are not being trained in these very, very hyper-relevant, higher-skilled types of roles. I think that's a pretty legitimate question there. The other question that I went into this episode wanting to ask, by the way, if you're still here, thanks for liking and subscribing to the channel. 6 days a week I'm bringing you a fresh video on this topic, on the topic of jobs, on the topic of AI. But the second question I went in here curious about was, has this $100,000 application fee actually stemmed the abuse? And this $100,000 application fee is really interesting to me. So there are signs that showing it's slowing. We're still early, but since the $100,000 application fee went into place, we've seen a reduction of 50% in the amount of H1B visa applications. So clearly there's less applications coming through. There's also some lawsuits that have been triggered because obviously anything that Trump does is going to result in lawsuits. I mean, that's kind of part of the course at this point. But what I also think is interesting as I kind of dove into this is the pushback that Trump is getting on those fees. So from PBS, I had the story from PBS. It says the South Dakota superintendent, Rob Coverdale, had to fill 15 teaching positions. Couldn't find the positions in his rural town in South Dakota, so what did he do? He filled in those roles with Filipino teachers. He brought in a handful of Filipino teachers on the H1B visa program. He says, quote, "We've hired the H1B teachers because we quite simply didn't have other applicants for those positions." So they're certainly not taking jobs from Americans. They're filling jobs otherwise simply would not have gotten filled. So why do we not have enough teachers? To me, this is a supply-demand problem, and you know, you're bringing in 15 teachers from overseas. They're not going to speak the languages well. They're probably, I'm making some assumptions here, by the way. I've worked with Filipinos. I think that they're great. They actually speak the language quite well, but there are some things that are going to get missed. Is that optimal? How many kindergartens you want taught by people that aren't from the United States? I think it's a reasonable question to ask. There's also warnings that if we really cut off these H1B visas, these skilled workers, if we're not bringing in people from overseas, the main idea here is that we just don't have enough talent here in the United States. And I'm just kind of wonder where this comes from, because I meet talented people every day. Obviously, we're not having kids as often now. Obviously, COVID completely decimated our educational system. We have a huge gap. We're producing kids that from high school that are illiterate. You know, there was a study that came out the other day where an astounding number, I think it was 2 out of 3 college kids couldn't solve a basic Algebra 1 question. Something like 5x minus 1 equals 7 or something like that, solve for x. You know, something very, very simple like that. So are we just completely lost here in the United States? You know, the American Medical Association predicts a shortage of 87,000 physicians over the next decade. The world is just changing so quickly, guys. And, you know, I'm not going to come in here and definitively state that we need H-1B visas or that they're going to stop. But what I will definitively state here is that AI is going to change all of those roles. Robotics are going to change all of these roles. So there will be opportunities for you to stand out. There will be ways for you to compete against these workers. It's not just on wages, it's going to be on communication, it's going to be on experience, it's going to be on your personal brand, it's going to be on what you're learning, who you know. All that is going to matter. All right, boys, appreciate you watching today's video. I'm very intrigued by this H-1B visa controversy, as it were. Very curious about where Trump's going to land as he's kind of flip-flopping on this topic. If you like today's video, smash like, smash subscribe, sign up for a newsletter, and I'll see you in the next one, boys. Peace.